And before I start this, I've been challenged a little bit on the last video or two from people that just really maybe aren't following me as much, and that's okay. And maybe they aren't really listening to the videos, and that's okay too. But I need you to know that I produce these videos, I go online, I do these lives to be thought-provoking without being provocative, if that makes any sense. Oh, don't get me wrong. There's times I'm going to step on toes because toes need to be stepped on. I need us all to use our God-given free will, free-thinking brain instead of just listening to everything that is constantly, repetitively thrown at us by media and or authorities, especially when you can flip the channels and they're all saying the exact same things with the exact same key buzzwords and whatnot. So I just want to start out with that. I do these to make them educational. I do them to make them informative. I do them to get people involved. All right, so I am 507 Patriot MN and work very closely with Operation Get Involved Minnesota. And that's who we are. That's why we do these things. That's why we try to enlist community engagement, whether it's one at a time or a whole group of you, as you've probably seen of late. So this week I had some medical appointments, and my medical driver, because I can't always drive in the condition I'm in with my hands, my medical driver was a Somalian man. I'm going to guess probably 40 years old. He's got some late teen kids. And at first, it wasn't a problem to me, but it was an awkward silence because I really don't know what to say. And when I've been around the limited exposure I've had with Somalian folks, they speak in their native language. I don't know how much English they speak, and they have a very thick dialect, if you will. So even when they are speaking English, I sometimes have a communication gap in really understanding what they're trying to say. So after about 10 minutes of awkward silence, I realized that this gentleman was listening to Minnesota Public Radio. I'm not necessarily a fan because NPR seems to lean completely left. But the show that he was listening to, and I don't recall what it was, I was pretty much agreeing with everything they were saying, and I felt like if this Somalian man, I should introduce him. His name is Muhammad. He's not here with me, but I did ask his name. If Muhammad was listening to something that I'm like-minded in thought process with, then maybe the ride to Rochester wasn't going to be so bad. So I finally got up the gumption and I said, Muhammad, I don't know much about Somalia. I don't know a ton about their culture, their land, their lifestyle. All I know is what I see here. And what I see here, in all honesty, has a lot to do with that mainstream media where you only get fed certain things. So I asked him, I said, Muhammad, I watched a documentary about a month ago that says and explains in this documentary that the reason Somalians are so upset with the United States is because we trespassed, if you will, on all of their commercial fishing rights, and that Somalia is a big fishing country right there in the ocean, and that's what they have to feed their families with, and that we came in with big commercial fishing and took that away, took away their viability, took away their sustainability to put food on the table for their families, and that's why the Somalian men in particular are quite upset with America and Americans. And he looked at me like I fell out of a tree and hit my doggone head. He said, "What? Serious?" I said, "Yeah, I've seen 2 or 3 documentaries, and they all allude to the whole fishing thing." He said, "Do you know that 1 to 2% of their not their income, but 1 to 2% of the people in Somalia are dependent on fishing? 1 to 2%." And he said, and truthfully, it's not the United States that overfished our area. It's the Asian countries, the countries from Asia. So that was kind of surprising to me, but it was also surprising to him that that's the information that I had found, that I had gotten a hold of. And he went on to say that most of their income, most of what they do for livings there are agriculture in both livestock. By the way, no pun intended, the number one producing camel producing country in the world, but other livestock as well. And that they're in a severe drought. Sometimes it doesn't rain for a year. And I said, well, explain what you mean by drought and not raining for a year. He said, oh, there's water there, but you have to dig down 1 meter or 2 meters to get to it. Now, 2 meters doesn't seem like a very big distance, but they don't have the technology there that we do for well drilling. So he was explaining that a well is at least $50,000, and that if you dig a hole, yes, you can get water and feed your livestock or grow some crops, work in agriculture, but they don't have the technology. And then he said the people running the well companies and the government that allow it are both crooked. Now, interestingly enough, Somalia doesn't have a big government. They don't have a big, strong government. They don't have a robust government. They don't have really much of an organized government, according to him. And I'm going to take his word. He's been here a good 10, 12 years, but I'll take him at his word that they don't have a government like we do. Here's where things got really interesting for me. When he said, our government is way too big. Here in the U.S., when he said, our government is way too involved in everybody's business. A permit for this, a license for that, a fee for this, a tax for that. The government just taking more and more and more, which I definitely resonate with that. That hit home for me. I agree. We're in agreement there. He went on to share with me about some of their corruption. And one of the things he said is that the government withholds any aid or any support until there's a harvest time or livestock are going to market. And then they release the aid. He said it's the exact opposite of what they need. They need any humanitarian aid or any assistance when, it's mid-season. They don't have an income. They're waiting for their product to be brought to market. But the government, he says, does this on purpose because it crashes the prices then. It influxes the market in a way that it crashes the pricing that a farmer will get for his livestock or for his crop. And he said that's their level of corruption. They do that on purpose. The other thing they do is, and hear me on this, again, he's from Somalia, I'm not. He said the government takes any aid that is sent to them, especially in the way of product or food, and they don't distribute it. They sell it. They sell it on the open market at high markup for their own profits. And it's all greed and corruption. It goes into the hands of the politicians. Sound familiar, anyone? So that was kind of interesting to me. And then he said this. We talked about, and I brought it up, I was relating back to Sheriff Bob Fletcher from the Ramsey County Sheriff's Department in St. Paul, Minnesota, and his Facebook and YouTube program that he does called Live on Patrol. He's been doing it about 3 years. I'm an avid watcher of it and fan of it. And I just looked at Muhammad and I said, Muhammad, I have to ask you, what's up with the violence in the Somalian teenage crowd? Mostly boys, but now also women. They are the predominant ones involved in the auto theft in the Twin Cities, Somalian boys. But now even Somalian girls, 14, 15, 16 years old, unlicensed, stealing these Kias and Hyundais and just driving like a bat out of... Yeah. And he looked at me and said, your country's fault. And I thought maybe this is where we were going to part hairs. He said the women of Somalia are recruited. They're convinced. They're marketed. There's marketing driven towards them to come to the United States, to the free world, to the free country, to live a better life. But that marketing includes our welfare system. It tells them how much money to the dollar that they'll get the second they land here. And Minnesota specifically is heavily marketed to the Somalians. Come to Minnesota Free food, free money. Here's what I didn't grasp. So we're talking about the violence and these teenage kids, and he's saying it's our fault. But he's saying it's because there's no father in the homes. In many, many, many Somalian homes. Many Somalian homes. And it happens quickly after they get to the U.S. Now again, my limited education, my limited exposure was, well, yeah, because in your country it's okay to be abusive to women. In our country, it's not. Well, in my heart, it's not. I know some think it is. He said, no, that's not it. He said the videotapes available to them in the classes they take in Somalia tell these women that when you get to the United States, especially Minnesota, you're going to get your $200 or $300 in food stamps for your family of your 3 or 4 kids, mom and dad. But if in your first 10 or 15 days when you get here, what you need to do is call 911 and say that your man's abusive, say that your man hit you or threw a child across the room, or slapped you or beat you, or something of that nature, get him thrown out of the house and backed up by a court order. And now he says they get $700, $800, $900 in food stamps alone, not counting the rest of the government support. And about this time, I looked at him and I said, "Can I ask if you vote in the United States?" He said, "Oh, yes." He said, "I worked very hard on the Trump campaign. I believe in Trump." Muhammad, my man. But here's why he said this is such a problem. We as a country, the Democrats, he named them the Democrats, are ruining this country because we give so much away, and that the welfare worker and the social worker literally tell these women, kick your man out of the house and you get 2-3 times more money. Now, before you call me a liar, I want you to know something. He's asked me, as a human being, as a man, as an American, to pay attention to how many Somalian women are now working in human services, working with welfare, working with social services, working with child support. He said that's by design. They're taught to go get those educations and go in those jobs so they can, in fact, talk to more Somalian women and expose to them how to double up or triple down, if you will, on what they earn. Now, what's this got to do with you and I? Well, first off, it was pretty obvious to me that I need to talk to more than just Muhammad. I'd like to hear from other gentlemen, and Muhammad's opening the doors to that in my community. But he said, you will find and we will find that most Somalian men vote Republican. But they feel left out because nobody in the Republican Party ever talks to them. Nobody in the Republican Party ever comes to their communities. Nobody in the Republican Party explains why one candidate might be better suited than the other. The Democrats heavily target the women and women with children. David Hahn, are you listening? I kind of doubt it, but you might just glean something here. MNGOP, are you listening? Now, there might be some communication glitches at times, but can you imagine if all of the men at Cedar Riverside and in the other Somalian communities in the Twin Cities and abroad, your Rochesters, your Mankato's, your Duluth, if all of those Somalian men voted Republican, and then if we tried to come up with some solutions for keeping that family unit together, and therefore got the Somalian women to vote alongside their man, I'm not saying, I'm just saying. All right, folks, I hope it's been thought-provoking. I hope you gained something from it. I hope you gleaned something. I hope it made you think. And then, more importantly, I hope it makes you act, because that's the whole